Welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and today we're looking at the Third Doctor story, Carnival of Monsters. For those of you who aren't very familiar with the Third Doctor era, from the start of his era, he was basically exiled on Earth by the Time Lords, not allowed to have any extraterrestrial adventures. However, the story prior to this is the Three Doctors, which we're going to be looking at very soon. And in that story, he is granted access to his TARDIS once again. So this is the Third Doctor's first journey in the TARDIS directly. And what a first journey this is.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Incredibly ambitious for a first extraterrestrial Third Doctor story.
Yeah, it's very. I like this story a lot because it demonstrates the potential, the creative potential for a show like Doctor Who.
Well, yeah, I was
because
going to say,
it gets pretty wild.
I adore this episode.
Yeah, it's a really
I
good
love
one.
this story so much. For
Yeah.
me, this story does what the Chase and the Deadly Assassin tried to do, where it's like do a bunch of different stuff and explore, have a lot of variety. But of the three, this is the only one that actually manages to make everything feel really important.
Yeah,
Because as you recall, one of my main criticisms with the Deadly Assassin was, as wild as episode 3 is, where it's just a Doctor being hunted across a grassland, it didn't feel very important to the story and couldn't have been replaced with anything. Here, they go to a lot of different locations and a lot of different stuff happens, but it all feels relevant and important to the story.
Yeah.
Stuff comes back around, like at the start you think that their journey into the land of the Drash Eggs is going to end up being just a fruitless thing, but no, it ends up being crucial to the final resolution.
Yeah, it all comes together.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of my favoritely written episodes of classic Who. I really, really love this story.
Yeah, it's as you say, it's great because much like the Chase and the Deadly Assassin, it's understanding the very strange creative risks you can take in a show like Doctor Who, but it's stringing them all together in a much stronger plot.
Yeah.
Which I know, not just with the Chase and the Deadly Assassin, but in a fair bit of classic Who, it cops a bit of flack for not having super strong plots, which is not an unfair criticism. So it's really quite refreshing to see a story that's as well constructed as it is here.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, man, shit gets wild, man.
It does get wild. I want to go straight to timescales.
Sure.
So 164 people voted. This episode has an average rating of 8. It's too low.
Yeah, I'd probably go a bit higher than that.
I'm telling you right now, I'm going to rank this a 9 unless my opinion changes drastically. I adore this episode. This might be my favorite classic era episode we've done. And considering we've looked at Genesis of the Daleks, that's saying something.
I'm not entirely surprised about that. I remember years ago, I think for your birthday, I tried to look for this episode to give you for your birthday, but I couldn't find it because I thought there's something about this episode that Cuff is going to really enjoy, and so I'm glad that kind of turned out to be true.
It's great that you know me so well.
It's almost like we've been friends for over a decade. Funny how that works.
Say it ain't so. We're still young.
Oh God, I don't feel young. Oh God, tell that to my joint pain. Anyway,
yeah.
But
tell it to mine as well. Can we sort both of our joint pain out?
I would love to get rid of my joint pain. That'd be fucking great.
Incredible. So this is also the 7th highest rated Third Doctor story. I can't speak to many of these. I will say it is quite nicely sandwiched between Doctor Who and the Silurians and the Sea Devils. We've reviewed the Sea Devils. I think this story is much better than the Sea Devils. Even though I really, really enjoy the Sea Devils, I think this is far superior.
I think this is better. I don't know, like I gave like Sea Devils a 6 because I had an issue with the ending, but even like beyond that, the way the story is constructed, I think this is better than Sea Devils. I'm slightly surprised. I would say that Silurians is better than Sea Devils. I don't know if I'd say it's better than this.
No.
But the ranking feels I don't know, like putting those 3 episodes where they are, that feels fairly right. But I'm actually slightly surprised this story isn't higher.
Well,
Granted, it's been years since I've seen a good chunk of
the Third Doctor.
yeah, of the Third Doctor's stories, but
Well, a lot of the stories that are
yeah,
above this, I've definitely heard of and are meant to be really, really good. Like I
yeah,
said, I think I told you, I said a couple of weeks ago, the highest Third Doctor story is Inferno,
yeah,
which we talked about.
yeah,
Then it's Spearhead from Space. Then it's the Green Death.
mm-hmm,
Then the Time Warrior. Then the Three Doctors.
mm-hmm.
Then Doctor Who and the Silurians, and then Carnival of Monsters.
Yeah. No, that seems pretty. Yeah, I guess that seems pretty fair.
Yeah, the only one of
There's
those
other
I
one.
haven't heard of is the Green Death.
Yeah. Oh, that was the one. I think we talked about it before when Sam was with us. We talked about it in Invasion of the Dinosaurs. It's the one with the giant maggots. That's
Oh, right, yeah, yeah,
it's Joe's departing story. It's quite good.
right.
Um, but yeah, this one it's pretty special.
It is.
Um,
It has a 8.1 for plot.
um, again, maybe a bit higher.
I'd go
Honestly,
higher. Like I said, purely just because of the amount that they're juggling across 4 episodes and uh how like not everything feels like it's crucial at all times, but everything does kind of feel like it has its place. It's
yeah,
paced really well. It doesn't do the Fang Rock thing where episode 4 is a breakneck speed to get through everything. Like the fourth
yeah.
episode is definitely paced a bit quicker than the others, but it's
But
kind of
there's still enough
it
time to
needs
sort
to
of
be.
breathe and
Yeah,
feel
no,
it.
certainly.
Mm.
8.2 for acting.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I can't really. I mean, maybe a bit higher than that, but I just can't think of any performances that aren't really selling it here. Because even the people who are on the ship, even though they're being very sort of mannered and theatrical, it suits the time period.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know I mentioned this before with Fang Rock, but if something similar at least, but with you know, what's his name, Ian Marter, Mr. Harry Sullivan, stand in here.
Yeah.
He he's very. It's almost Victorian. He looks like a lead male character in a Gilbert and Sullivan play.
No,
I can easily
100%, yeah.
imagine that Ian Marter must have played like Frederick or Nanki Poo in his time because just that's just what he looks like. In fact, most of those characters on that ship feel like
Yeah.
Gilbert and Sullivan characters. It's very funny in that sense. But they're really selling it.
Yeah.
The like the I forgot what they're called, but the council from Inter Minor, they're really good. They're nice and kind of hammy and theatrical, but they get again the sort of very it's a very British feel. It's
Yeah.
like they're upper class whole types, and you really get that with the performances. The guy who plays
Did you say upper class hole?
yeah,
That's a great turn of phrase. I've never heard that before.
I used it when we did Fang Rock, and I think, and also when we
I
did
must have missed that.
yeah, no, I got it from the thick of it, which is
Oh, right.
unsurprising.
Oh, then I have heard it before. I've seen the thick of it. I don't know why I forgot that. I'll be using that a lot more now. 7.5 for effects. I think for the most part, the effects in this are pretty strong. A lot of the alien masks are very clearly masks. There's a point where one of the actors sort of moves part of this face and then the mask clearly wobbles, which doesn't really hold up very good. Also, a lot of the green screen is very noticeable, but apart from that, everything's fine. I quite like the design of the Drashiks.
I think it's pretty good, given the period. The one shot where Vorg has got the weird little pincers coming down
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the machine. I'm surprised how good that looks, given the budget and the time period that they were working in. So I think like it's really kind of wonderful with the story. It's very ambitious, but it's astonishing how able they're managing that ambition in this story. Maybe not perfectly, and certainly with the special effects, but pretty damn well. I mean, I think the most noticeable bit for me was when the TARDIS is growing. I mean, the guy who's holding it when it's about box shape, or box size. It's like he's holding on to it a bit too long, and then there's close up of all these people's faces where it clearly is growing. We just don't see it, which to be fair is actually a pretty decent bit of direction. But yeah, that's probably one of the weakest points for me. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, I think it's pretty good. The green screen's not too bad. It's believable enough for me. And the Drashigs are really good. And maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm fond of 50s, 60s, and 70s Godzilla movies, but they look like kaiju monsters. Like I could easily imagine 60s or 70s Godzilla going up against a creature like that. It looks eerily similar to sort of a lot of those designs.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. But I think generally speaking, the special effects are handled pretty well, and man, given its classic Who, God, they could have been so much worse.
Sure, certainly.
Yeah.
7.9 for replay.
Again, bit higher. This
Yeah,
is, I think, as good on a second watch.
that's good to
Um,
hear.
yeah. I watched it again this morning, and yeah, but pretty much just as good.
Amazing. Um, 3 out of 86 people say the story requires a previous. It really doesn't. To the extent that they don't really address the exile that the Doctor's previously been on, you could and we did pop this on without that context, and it's a very standalone, enjoyable Doctor Who story. Despite that,
There is one element though where you would need a previous story, and it's small, but it's surprisingly pertinent to the plot. Joe's skeleton keys.
okay, I was
Now,
going to ask about that because
yeah, when
I was confused. I didn't know if she had taken them off of one of the sailors or if that is
that's
something
what I
from a
thought
previous
originally.
story.
But I did a bit of research on the TARDIS wiki, and I think it said that she got them in Terror of the Autons, so they're just things that she has with her.
Right.
So um, that that would need a little bit of context because
Sure.
again, given how kind of small they are and how seemingly incidental they are, that she's just sort of got them. They're pretty pertinent to the plot because they allow the Doctor and Joe to escape at various points.
But I
So
will say the way that the episode's directed, I did kind of assume initially that they are something from a previous story, just because there was that little musical sting that happens when
yeah,
she first pulls them
and
out.
even the way the imagery's framed, it's like, oh, here's the keys, guys. They're bring
Yeah. Well, especially
so
the way the Doctor doesn't at any point go, "Where did you get those, Joe?" It's
yeah.
sort of implied. Okay, he knows what they are.
Yeah, because originally I did think that she stole them from somewhere on the ship, but no. From what I've read, it's something that she got in Terror of the Autons. So there you are.
Okay. Let's read this synopsis. The Doctor and Joe take the TARDIS on a test flight. They arrive on a cargo ship, the SS Bernice, that appears to be crossing the Indian Ocean in 1926, but is in fact trapped inside a miniscope, a banned peep show of miniaturized life forms on the planet Inter Minor. They enter another section of the scope, but find themselves confronted by ferocious Drashigs. The Doctor eventually breaks out of the scope and returns to full size. The device is owned by a pair of Lerman entertainers, Vorg and Scherner, who hope to make a quick profit from Interminer's hitherto reclusive natives. They have run into trouble, however, as the bureaucratic Minorians are dissatisfied with their credentials. The Doctor's efforts to rescue Joe from the scope, which is on the point of breaking down, are hampered by the schemes of two Minorians, Kalik and Oram, who plan to dupe their superior, Pletrak, and overthrow the planet's president, Zarb, by allowing the Drashigs to escape. Vorg destroys the Drashigs with an Eradicator weapon, and the Doctor, by linking the scope to the TARDIS, manages to return all of the exhibits to their points of origin. Joe materializes beside the wrecked device, and she and the Doctor then depart in the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm. That is the plot.
It sure is.
And a pretty exciting one. It must be
Yeah, I mean, like I
said.
said, for a first post-Earth outing, it's very ambitious. To not only be like, we're going to this alien world, but we're going to materialize inside of a device on an alien world that for the entirety of episode 1 we're going to mislead the audience into thinking they're just on Earth again.
Yeah, and have this seemingly random story about these two showman types.
Yeah.
Um,
The first
on this
episode is really strong
alien
in that
planet.
regard. It's like, it does a good job of setting you up with the mystery of what's going on with, are they on Earth, are they not?
Yeah.
Before having previously established, okay, there's this other alien colony, maybe that'll come into play a bit later on in the story. But as it turns out, no, they're in play right from the beginning.
Yeah, no, it all fits together well, and it's kind of great that the the first episode, it is very much about the mystery, because we're sitting here thinking, what the fuck does this ship have to do with this other alien planet? And we're having to put together the pieces of this puzzle, and
Yeah,
then that great cliffhanger. Incidentally, as opposed to a lot of Classic Who, really good cliffhangers on this one.
great cliffhangers all around. Yeah,
So we've got that, and then like afterwards the mystery immediately gets solved where we find out, oh, okay, they're inside this thing. And then it kind of works because we're then operating on in a state of dramatic irony, waiting for the Doctor and Joe to figure it out. So it becomes tense but in a different way, and the fact
yeah,
that they're
yeah.
able to switch it up a little bit
And they
is
do a
really
great
really
job. Like
entertaining.
they also do a great job. Like in the first episode, getting us to connect with the passengers on this ship. Major Daly is a great character in this.
Yeah, it's kind
I
of
love
fun.
that he's like he sees the plesiosaur, and then like after initially reacting with shock, is like, oh, I wonder if it'll pop up again. I'd love to have its face on my wall. Like that's such a that's a great mentality for this kind of character to have.
Yes, very very modern Major General.
Certainly.
It's yeah, they're very endearing characters, maybe just because of how quaint they are. They're
Yeah, yeah,
so I don't know, like you feel affection for them, but you know that the show's also making fun of them, right?
yeah, yeah. Definitely.
There's
That's
that one line where I can't remember his name, but the young guy that Ian Marter plays, where he says, "Oh yeah, no, I know, I know all about Johnny Chinaman," and it's like, all right, it's there's the racism coming in there, but it's funny because you're laughing at them. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, and there's just a way that they're written where you you're definitely laughing at them, but
Well,
you
it's
do
also
feel some weird affection for them, which is interesting.
yeah, but it's also really effective in terms of the overall storytelling because like for that first episode, you are sort of treating them as though they're like just regular people that the Doctor and Joe are encountering, and then
Yeah.
when they start to tease the whole okay they're repeating themselves, what's going on here? But then as soon as you learn that they are essentially zoo exhibits, it's weird how the tone of the story kind of shifts, and then you start sort of seeing them that way as well, even though they are like actual people with backstories and lives and thoughts and feelings. Like the way that a lot of the dialogue repeats, how they reset. It does kind of weirdly. It does a great job shifting your perspective on them throughout, and when that perspective shift comes, it's after that we get the Chinaman bit, and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the sort of the revelations of those characters. It's clearly been done in a pretty deliberate and precise way.
Yeah,
Because yeah, like it slowly dawns on you. It's pretty fucked up when you think about it. Like these are human beings that have been taken and put in this sick carnival. So
not just human beings as well. We learned that there's quite a lot of stuff trapped in this
yes,
thing. Like there's Drashigs and other alien species, and we see a Cyberman at one point.
and yeah, and an ogron, which is another creature that would crop up. Had it cropped up before this. I think so. I think Day of the Daleks may have come before this episode.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah.
it does do that as well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, incidentally, only time you're going to see a Cyberman in the Third Doctor's era.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he never faced a Cyberman
That's a shame.
in his era. He only did in the Five Doctors,
Ah, gotcha.
which is interesting. But yeah, like it's the existential sort of terror of it. It slowly gets revealed, like it slowly dawns on the audience. Like when you've got Joe and the Doctor commenting on how awful these are and how the Doctor had to get these miniscopes banned, you realize, yeah, this is
Yeah, no,
this is
100%.
fucked up.
And it's interesting that it is fucked up enough that even the Time Lords themselves would eventually realize, no, we have to ban these.
Yeah,
Like that goes a long way. They had that big moment of I thought your people did interfere, and that was like, yeah, I know. That's how bad these things are.
yeah. Well, do they not interfere? That anyway, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, no, it revealing it, the implications, like the horrifying implications, revealing it in that way really, I think, works to the story's benefit.
But it's interesting that it does so without like completely dehumanizing the people operating the machine.
Yeah, because we get to know who Schörner and Vorg are, and we get to they're kind of annoying, Vorg in particular, because he's just a bit of a moron.
Yeah.
But you still kind of feel for them a little bit. You don't want them to get incinerated. You don't
Yeah, I
want
mean,
them to have to.
maybe it's also because we empathize with having to be stuck in a bureaucracy like that, like all the red tape and that goes a long way to being like, okay, just let them, just come on, this is all unnecessary. Let them move on. And
Well, that's
keep exploiting these lower beings.
Well, one, that's really fucked up. But the thing is, the Minorians, they're a very good, very British, very Doctor Who sort of villain, because you don't see all the details of their society, but you get the impression that this is certainly a very dictatorial society.
Yeah.
And even in the end, when they're basically saying, yeah, we've basically got to incinerate the Doctor. God knows what kind of diseases he's carrying. I mean, we've lived through a pandemic, so in a way, you almost sympathize with that. But then you realize, yeah, but they're taking it way too far, right?
Yeah, and they're also effectively slaving an entire
And
civilization
no, they're
as well.
enslaving a whole other species, which is fucked up. So they make it very clear who these people are and the sort of culture that they're sort of coming from, and how terrible it is, and how I love how sort of duplicitous these characters are. And also kudos to Michael Wisher. He's here again.
Yep.
Playing Kalik, and he's great, and he's just as duplicitous, well, maybe not as duplicitous, but almost as duplicitous as he is as Davros, which is good fun.
This is the performance that might have earned him the role of Davros some years later.
Oh, honestly, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Because I mean, Genesis was only about 3 years later, so there you are. It's having the characters, the Minorians, they're good fun, because again, like, they're very easy to make fun of, but they also, you realize their awful dictatorial society means that, oh, actually they could do some really serious damage to the people around them. That's really fucked up. So you sort of helps with the stakes, I think.
I will say, like, those scenes with the Minorians, at times they kind of drag a bit, and I think that might be because we've seen this kind of thing heaps of times before with, this power struggle happening, and, the writing's on the wall as soon as this plot begins. I will say the depths that it goes to were interesting to see, like just how far Kalik was willing to go.
Yeah.
To essentially keep this totalitarian, horrific military state in power. That being said, I don't know how I feel about his downfall, because it ends up, the reason he ends up being defeated in the end is because he doesn't believe Vorg when he says how powerful the Drashigs are. He's like, well, surely he's overestimating them, or like, he's embellishing slightly. And part of me is like, oh, come on, that's stupid. No way this character's that dumb. But then another part of me is like, no, he's elitist. Of course that character's that dumb.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah,
it's
makes
the same
enough
trap
sense.
that a lot of these similar characters, even in Doctor Who, fall into. They think, yeah, these, lesser beings can't be smarter than us. We don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
So thematically, it all kind of fits together pretty well. Yeah, incidentally, I read up that I think it was Terrence Dix who wanted to add in all this sort of political intrigue, because before that, like, the only threat to Vorg and Schörner was that they were going to be deported, so I think he wanted to add in something there to increase the tension, and, thank God he did, because...
Yeah, no, yeah, it definitely
it
needs
works
that.
a lot better.
It needs it, certainly. Especially because, like, there's the threat of the machine being destroyed or obliterated, I think is what they use.
Yeah.
While there's not just the Doctor and Joe, but many, many living beings still
creatures in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And good to see, the Doctor once again standing up for, the right of sentient life. It's really great to see that. Also great to see him sort of, he's pro, good regulation, which is so funny, Cuff, because, as Vork says, Doctor Who, but its job is simply to amuse, nothing serious, nothing political.
No, no, no.
Oh God, that I remember I sent that clip to you and Sam a few years ago. God, that made me laugh. That's like one of my favorite quotes in Doctor Who now. Even if it was unintentional, and I'm not sure if it really was completely unintentional, but even if it was, Jesus Christ, that's funny. I wish there was like some sort of, I don't know, montage out there where it's like, where it's him just saying that line over and over, contrasted with overtly political scenes throughout Doctor Who's run, including in the classic series. So,
Yep.
oh, it's great. That's so great.
It's amazing. It's always great. And the people who need to learn that lesson aren't the ones listening to this podcast, but it can't be understated how wrong they are.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great because, like, he says that, and then, like, almost immediately after, you see overtly political conspiracy. Like, the guy says, yeah, we could use this as, like, a form of entertainment to keep the masses, blind and dumb and keep them as followers. Yeah, so...
Contrasted with
great
the opposite,
contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the different beliefs of the tribunal or whatever they're called, like, they're all shitty.
Yeah.
Where
But they're
like,
shitty in different ways.
Yeah, like, on one hand we can use entertainment to keep them subdued, and on the other hand, no, entertainment gives them hope. We don't want them happy. We want them working for us.
And it it really works because by that point they, oh God, I feel so sorry for those slaves.
I know.
It's fucked up. Like,
that's the only like real thing that this episode doesn't quite.
Yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't.
It sets up a slave society, and then the Doctor leaves without
just sort of
really
leaves
addressing it at all. He didn't learn about it, which is one thing. But like, I like that there is the implication that like Vorg is going to like work his way up and become like the leader, and maybe he'll do something about it.
Yeah, and I think like it's certainly not like the ethical slap in the face that Idiot's Lantern was, but it's just one of those sort of untied ends where you think, it's just kind of a shame.
It's also great that like even the person who, the only one of the Minorians who wasn't like actively conspiring to kill people, even he is duped by lesser life forms by the end, where he's like he falls to the old parlor trick of the cups and balls, and which
that was funny.
Which one of these things is the seed under?
Yeah, that was a good bit. Really, really nice bit of characterization. And overall, like, really good characters. They're really rich, I think. I mean, Vorg and Shona, certainly. But even the Minorians have got all those little sort of machinations, have sort of got their own agendas, where it would have, I think, been very easy to sort of do the thing that Doctor Who sometimes does, where it takes a whole species and just makes them all the same. So it's good that that there's a bit of nuance between them, which is really great. And getting back to the horrible way that slaves are treated, it's really effective that we by the time we see the political machinations of the Minorians, we see how cruelly they treat the slaves by the guy saying, "Oh no, he's just knocked out, but he's going to be basically, I forgot what they say, but that he's basically going to be killed and either incinerated or chopped to bits or something." Like, Jesus Christ, man, these people are shitheads.
Well, yeah, the exchange is effectively, "Oh, good, he's dead. Oh no, just knocked out, but he will die. Oh, naturally."
Yeah, of course he will. And it's interesting in that way, and I suppose kind of a shame that they weren't able to explore that element of it, because you could argue the way that Vorg treats the creatures in the Miniscope is similar to the way that the Minorians treat their slaves, in that they treat them, like cattle. Like, literally, that's how Vorg describes... livestock is the way he describes them. Which is, as the Doctor points out, is really fucked up.
I think it's a key thing that Vorg ends up learning.
Oh yeah.
From that, he ends up being like, "No, okay, you're right. We need to help get all of these living things to safety." And then I think that's why the setup that he might end up running the planet that is, I think, not enough, but it does like go a little bit to being like, okay, maybe the
There's
slaves
hope.
will be all right after all.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Like his character arc, like given that I mean he's obviously a main character, but I'm sort of surprised how complex that character arc is, and it really I think does the episode the story rather a lot of favors. Um, so that's all really quite good. Um, and it also, in a way, it contrasts the core motivations, um, of Vorg as compared to the Minorians, where the Minorians are, even if they are a bit varied, they're still at their core, corrupted by their horrifying ideology. Whereas Vorg is just a bit of a self-centered, bungling opportunist trying to make some money. Not good, but
No, yeah.
slightly better than crypto fascist insanity. So
But then
it
throughout all of this, like these political themes, like and these heavy character arcs, the episode has time for a lot of like lighthearted sci-fi fun, like the Doctor having a fist fight with
yeah,
pre-Harry
yeah,
Sullivan,
yeah,
and
um,
a random plesiosaur in the ocean that everyone keeps forgetting about. It's like, oh god, it can be really fun at times as well. This
yeah.
story,
It's very there. Like if you were to watch this and maybe not pay a lot of attention to it, you would mistake it for just a standard sci-fi romp. There's a
yeah,
lot more going on to it, obviously, but the sci-fi romp element is really entertaining.
yeah,
And the episode understands that, which is really
sure.
good.
I cannot overstate how well written this story is from like a structural standpoint, because
Yeah.
I was ready for it. Like when when the second episode is nearing its conclusion and they think they're out of the machine, but they're clearly just in another exhibit essentially. I knew what was going through my head. My thought process was, okay, so this is going to be the rest of the story. It's going to be like a road trip through these different enclosures until they eventually get out of the machine, and then they're going to work to help free everyone else. No, what happens is the Drashigs chase them back into the inner workings of the miniscope, and then that ends up becoming crucial when the Drashigs end up basically trashing the rest of the machine and escaping, and then they have to figure out how to get out of the machine itself, the Doctor and Joe that is, and the only way they can do that is down this shaft that is too steep to climb. But it turns out, there was rope in the boat. Just when the sailing boat was starting to become irrelevant to the story, they find a way to make it important again. It's just so well written.
Yeah. And it's interesting, but if this had had a bigger budget, like maybe if this was a modern Who story, there would have been a temptation, I think, just to have it be almost like a chase story where they're just going through different areas. But when you think about it, they don't really go anywhere. They go to
No.
the ship, they go to the marshes, they go inside the machine, which is really cool,
Yeah.
and then they obviously go outside the machine. But that's kind of it. But in a way, and this is sort of gets back to what I've said about Doctor Who, really all along. Its limitations mean they have to be more creative with the plot, and that's pushed them to make this really well constructed story.
Yeah.
So this is very much what Doctor Who generally and even Classic Who does, but like as I say, kind of at its best. Like the limitations have pushed the writers to take it to interesting other areas, which is really great, and made a stronger story for it.
Yeah, I mean, and also, like, to your point, this is a story that I can really see working with the format of Revival Who, because again, it is kind of like it's a departure from a regular Doctor Who story, and it's the kind of thing that you can really only do once. Twist the standard format of Doctor Who to tell a story that only Doctor Who can tell. Revival Who loves to do that. I'm finding out Classic Who loves to do that as well, and that's the kind of Doctor Who that I love the most. And
Sure.
and I can see this being a two-part revival era story with like David Tennant and Martha, let's say.
Sure.
Like I can see that fitting really well in season 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that. Um yeah, it's just got those I don't know, like I guess universal qualities. Like maybe that's just because of the sheer quality of the storytelling
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you could do it in either era. But yeah, I can kind of see this as a revival Who story.
I can't decide if this is a good Joe episode or a bad Joe episode. Because like she's doing stuff, but not a lot of it seems that crucial. Like she has the skeleton keys that help the Doctor and Joe escape and learn about the mystery, and she's also the one that comes up with the idea to get the rope.
Yeah.
Those are good moments.
Yeah.
But then she gets stuck in a bog for no reason. Like for some reason she decides to walk into what is clearly a deep bog. And then also for the back half of the story, her only role is to try and get the passengers of the ship to remember what's been going on, which she is unsuccessful at.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, well, the thing with the bog, I mean, it kind of makes sense because, yeah, they're obviously being chased by the Drashigs, but
Sure.
it is still... You know, the story does, like... It gets kind of bogged down. Let's pretend I didn't use that pun. But yeah, I can understand why that might be a bit frustrating. I think it's... And this goes to another issue as well. It's not, like, terrible, and I do enjoy... watching Jo in this story, and the interactions she has with the Doctor are pretty fun.
Well, yeah, it's fun. It's fun watching her challenge the Doctor based on the evidence that she has in episode 1. Where
do you ever admit you're wrong?
Yeah, that's a great exchange. But it's always fun to watch. Like he thinks they're on an alien planet, she thinks they're on Earth. As it turns out, they're both right and they're both wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But it's fun to watch that squabble for a while because, like, he's basing it off what he knows to be true, and she's interpreting it based on what she sees and what all the information that she's taking in. Yeah, but at no point does it get like really hostile. It's just like a playful thing, like you said. Like, do you ever admit you're wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, which is true, and I think. It's one of those things where, like, when you watch those interactions in a modern lens, maybe some of them are slightly uncomfortable. Like, a lot of the time you'll see the Doctor sort of shushing Jo and, telling her to be quiet. And the fact that he's kind of dismissing her, I can't imagine those interactions being the same in a Revival Who episode. But it's not... it doesn't hurt... it really doesn't hurt the characterizations and the chemistry between the two.
And it does lead to that amazing comedic moment, which I really, really enjoyed in the first episode. It's the first time that they get trapped. They get found out by the crew of the ship. And Jo is doing a lot of legwork in, like, giving them a backstory and going, oh, my uncle here.
Yeah.
We got a bit lost, and the Doctor's there going, hang on a minute, no, that's not what happened at all. But then as soon as, like, authority comes in, it's like, how specifically did you sneak onto the ship? She goes... Well, go on, Uncle, you explain it. And he just gives her a look like, oh, now you want me to take over? It's a really great moment. I really enjoy that exchange.
Yeah, it's, obviously really, like, a good turn for both Jo and certainly the Doctor, and, like, great performances, especially with, John Pertwee and Katie Manning. I think there are probably better Jo episodes. Even the Sea Devils, she's certainly, I think, doing more in that plot than she is here. But it's not... It doesn't ruin it for me. Worth pointing out, I think. But, yeah.
Well, like I said, it's not like she's, like, just along for the ride throughout the whole story. There are moments when she takes initiative. She has a lot of nice banter with the Doctor. Yeah. She's doing a lot of good stuff. But then there are moments when the stuff that she's doing doesn't feel incredibly necessary or it is actively getting in the way, like the bog scene.
And I think in that sense she might be a bit more certainly involved, I guess, in the first half of the story than the second. But in a way, like, even the bit where she gets skeleton keys, that's really interesting and gives an interesting perspective on how they both think, because the Doctor can sometimes get stuck in these sort of spirals and get very tunnel vision, but then Jo just says, oh, but, come back to reality, Doctor, I've got the skeleton keys here. And then it's, so it, like, it maybe, like, we want more from Jo as a character, but it's certainly not hurting the episode, and the the interactions themselves are good fun, and there's also a nice amount of self-awareness. Again, like that line, do you ever admit you're wrong? It's a nice bit of irony because
Yeah.
it
Well,
reminds us, oh yeah, the Doctor's a bit of a sometimes he's a little bit of a shit, isn't he?
yeah. Well, I think you can. It's really just like in the back half of the story when the stuff that she's doing doesn't seem to have much of
Yeah.
a role. Like her main, like I said, her main role is trying to convince the passengers to jog their memories about what's been going on, and she's ultimately unsuccessful at that. I think what could have been interesting to see, rather than that, is throughout like basically the whole of episode 3 and at the start of episode 4, she's the one leading the evacuation efforts, or maybe not evacuation efforts, but she's helping like guide the passengers away from the Drashigs and helping them run away from them, only to then having them keep forgetting her. But despite that, she's still able to sort of corral them and like, okay, come on now, this way, they're onto us again. Now we have time to sort of take a moment. And are you remembering any of this? You've seen them before. No, you've forgotten again? Oh, great. Oh, here they come. Now this way. Go, go, go.
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's maybe slightly disappointing in the sense that, like, because we've seen the Sea Devils and we see, what Joe could be doing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I don't think it majorly hurts the episode.
No,
Maybe
no,
it's
no.
something she'll observe.
No, it doesn't. And like, for what she's doing it well. And I think
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, for sure.
Before you realize by the end of the episode that no one is going to remember anything, it's nice that she is like. It's nice to see her humanity and being like, I'm trying to help the people out here. Yeah. They don't know that they're trapped in this freak show, but if I can maybe get through to them, they can like. Maybe I don't know. Like, it's nice to try and like give them some autonomy back.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also good. Again, getting back to that element of sort of the self-awareness. It's clear that Robert Holmes, like, he's got a pretty good understanding of who Joe and the Doctor are and how they can interact, which is really entertaining to see.
It's another good John Pertwee episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of the Doctor, another great turn from John Pertwee.
I can very quickly like cementing his position as my favorite classic Doctor.
Yeah, I can understand why. He there's something about him where I don't know if this is exactly the best way to phrase it, but he seems to be, even in terms of his performance, the most consistent.
Oh yeah.
Classic Doctor. Now maybe that does also go to the writing side as well. I'm not exactly sure where the line would be between the two, but he, like, when he's being the Doctor and doing very doctory things, it's that wonderful warm feeling. It's like, yeah, with a classic John Pertwee moment, fantastic. The bit where he's, in the darkly comedic way, where he's pretending to be pretending to be a carnival guy with Joe, when he's like, roll up, roll up. It's just so funny. And really helpful in that scene, because it's even though he's obviously making a joke out of it, the darkness of the whole situation is still there, and his performance is doing a lot to convey that, which is really neat.
Definitely.
I also noticed something, I think only when watching this story, but it's certainly true through other John Pertwee stories. He has this mannerism where he rubs the back of his neck when he's trying to figure out something. And I think it speaks to that consistency of performance, that he understands this is who this character is, and he's getting in the zone.
Well, it's interesting because I've noticed that David Tennant in his portrayal often does that as well.
I wonder how deliberate that is, because I know that Peter Davison, for example, actively said that when he was playing the Doctor, he deliberately took mannerisms from previous Doctors and incorporated them into his performance. So I'm not sure how deliberate that is on David Tennant's part, but
well, Peter Davison was David Tennant's Doctor, so
that's true.
It's possible that if it's amazing this line of succession where if Davison had picked this up from Pertwee and then Tennant picked this up from Davison. That's interesting if that's the case.
Doctor Who legacy. But yeah, it's as I say, though, overall, a really, really solid performance. Yeah. And he's good at doing sort of the whole spectrum. He's good at being funny. He can be playful. He can be super serious. And when he's being super serious, it is very compelling, because he's pointing out, yeah, what you're doing is really fucked up. Stop that right now, or I will stop you.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it's really great. In that sense. Apparently, this is another little bit of tidbit that I got from the TARDIS wiki. But when Vorg is speaking Polari, that is actually a real form of Carney lingo, and both I've forgotten the name of the actor, but the guy who played him and John Pertwee could speak it, so they had a lot of fun behind the scenes speaking it to each other, which is funny because the Doctor doesn't know how to speak it in the show, so
That's great.
it's quite interesting. But there's the playfulness, and you could tell that they're having a fun time. I think in that interaction, I
Yeah.
think obviously the Doctor's being very nonplussed there, but you can almost tell there's kind of a twinkle in John Pertwee's eye that he's having a lot of fun with this interaction, which is really really great. Um, Vorg and Sherna are fun.
Yeah.
I like
They're
their
good times.
interactions. I like the fact that Sherna is basically smarter than Vorg is, and
Well, of course. Yeah.
yeah, because Vorg he's just a bit of a moron, really, but he's a bit of a lovable moron, yeah, and he's not, like I said, in contrast to the Minorians. His greed is obviously a disturbing thing that's making him, lack empathy and compassion, but he's not like an actively evil person. He's just, again,
No.
a bit of a
Yeah.
greedy, dumb bungler of a
I
human
wasn't
being.
even like particularly seeing it as greed. It's more I saw the characters as more like just trying to get by, because they
Yeah,
mentioned
that's
that
true.
they
That's
mentioned that
also true.
they used their last like credit stick or
Yeah,
whatever
they've
it
got
was
like
to
the
get to.
the last credit bars, so
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like if this was like a massive enterprise and he was like the J.P. Morgan of the mini scopes, maybe yeah, but like there's more layers to the character than that. You get the sense that
yeah,
it's like he's been using the mini scope to live like basically paycheck to paycheck for this long that he has started to like see the people inside the machine as like a means to an end as opposed to like
yeah, sure.
having started to like look down on them. Maybe I especially because he won the machine, like he didn't like seek it out. My interpretation is like he got it, realized what it was, and went, "Oh, that's a bit rough, but I guess I have to like figure out
Yeah.
how to eat this week." And then over time has sort of
yeah,
developed this
that's true.
livestock mentality.
Yeah, I think maybe it was just that last scene where he's conning the Minoran, where I think, oh, okay,
That's true, yeah.
he's a very much a con man here, but I think you're actually very right there to point out there's more to the character than that, and in a way, it kind of helps with the greater themes of the episode
Yeah.
because it's dealing with these issues kind of on a more systemic level, which is really good. It's like, yes, Vorg is a bit of a con man, but he's almost been forced into that position because the universe that he's traipsing through is pretty fucked up. Like, he's got barely any money left, and so he has to do this, and then that nastiness kind of gets handed down to the creatures that are in the miniscope.
Yeah.
And then the Doctor points out how fucked up that is, but he's still, able to learn from it. So we realize, oh, it's just sort of these systemic issues that are forcing all of these people into this situation. So
But there's also the element of like when he is doing the con at the end, he's conning a horrible person, so we don't really
yeah,
see
that's
it
that's
as
also
the,
very true.
we don't really see it as the act of money grubbing that it otherwise
No.
would have been if he was doing it to a peasant. As is often the case with these cons, it's about like getting the last bit of cash out of the person's pocket and taking
Yeah.
it from them. Here it's like you're evil, and now we're going to bring you down to size with this
Yeah.
like parlor
That's
trick.
also very true.
Essentially, it's a lot
very
more
true.
like it's less about it. It comes across less like a nefarious act and more of like a karmic retribution kind of thing.
Yeah, that's also very true. Which is why I think that scene is as funny as it is.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, obviously some definitely moral grey areas, and it's good when the Doctor
Certainly.
sort of cuts him down to size a bit. But you do feel a lot of empathy for him. He's a really just a fun, enjoyable character.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
And yeah, and good performance as well. Um, and yeah, and as I say, Sherna, she's there to kind of cut him down to size as well, pointing out that he's. Well, I mean, it points to, as you say, the fact that he's very desperate, that he's got this technology that he won, that he doesn't know how to work, and that he's desperately trying to scrape by with it.
Yes, definitely.
And the fact that he sort of gets money in the end by conning this guy, again, as you say, apart from the fact that the guy deserved it because he's a jerk, it makes sense because you realize, yeah, like, when is he going to see his next credit bar? you know? So yeah, fair enough.
Is there much else to discuss? We've
Um,
basically covered it all, right?
I think so.
I mean,
I don't. Hmm.
yeah, it is. I mean, it is largely a kind of thing where it's like, it's a good episode. Here's why it's good. The themes are there. I do like how there is this element of like equating the miniscope to kind of like a goldfish bowl or like a
Yeah, or
zoo
an ant farm or
or an
something.
ant farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it does like it is the kind of thing that will make you like sort of maybe not like hugely, but like make you think twice about like because there are certainly issues about keeping animals in captivity.
Yeah.
There's a scale of like it say what you will about household pets, but the fact that we like sort of bred dogs to be domesticated wasn't amazing ethically all those years ago. But like even ranging up to like keeping like endangered animals in captivity out of the wild, issues like that, how it sort of touches upon those issues without really giving like a solid answer about like the depths of them. Wait, the episode is like obviously it's bad to do this stuff to like sentient creatures, but like where's the line kind of thing.
As flies are to wanton boys, are we to the gods.
Yeah, and that aside from the Minorian stuff is about as deep as the themes go.
Yeah, which like it's fine. I think
Yeah,
it
no,
works
yeah,
pretty
not
well.
every episode needs to be a heavily thematic sci-fi romp that really makes you think about our position in the universe or how we handle like a piece of modern society. Sometimes it just can be a really, really entertaining sci-fi romp with a little sprinkle of morality thrown in.
Oh yeah, nothing serious, nothing political.
Oh no, yeah,
Oh
yeah. With
god,
that in mind,
I
I
love
said
that
this at
line
the top.
so much.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I love that line so much. I'm going to be laughing at that for the rest of my life.
I said at the top of the episode, I'm probably going to be giving this a 9. That is exactly where I'm landing on this. Very much in love with this episode. It's like if not for the Minorian stuff being a bit like been there, done that, it would probably get a bit higher for me. But as it is, incredibly entertaining. Hour and a half of Doctor Who, 9 out of 10.
I'm going to mention one tiny small thing here.
Yeah,
When so so the Eradicator, like the big laser, whatever it is, so that's not able to destroy the
machinery.
the miniscope.
Yeah,
But then later on, one of the guys uses one of their little lasers, and that kind of destroys the miniscope. I mean, maybe
it doesn't.
I'm
No, it doesn't destroy the miniscope. It destroys the Drashigs. And what destroys the miniscope is the machine that the Doctor had used to sort of power up the connected to the TARDIS. That overloads, like, because the Doctor says wait till the last minute, and that action is what's
yeah,
causing
is what ruins it.
the thing to overheat. Yeah,
I thought, yeah, like the bit when they're using the small laser, I think I just thought, well, if the Eradicator didn't work, why is this finally finishing them off? But I guess if they've already used the Eradicator, then
yeah,
that's sort of laying the groundwork
yeah. Well,
for.
they're using the whole point. The laser thing was to like replace a bit of the Eradicator that had been taken by Calic. I don't think it's essentially operating as a battery. I don't think the implication is that it destroyed the machine. I don't think they ever aim it at the machine in the final
Oh
encounter.
no, I mean, sorry, I mean the little device that the Minorians use when they when they knock the slave unconscious. That seems to do. My point is that seems to
Oh,
do
that
more.
thing. Right,
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah, that seems to do more damage than the Eradicator did. And I was watching it this morning, and I thought, does that
Well, again, that thing
yeah
isn't used on the miniscope. It's used on the
on
Doctor's device.
mm,
That's what causes the overload to happen and why the machine
and
starts
it
heating up
yeah.
and everything.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. All right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. Maybe like this is it. Obviously there's like no such thing as like a perfect story.
Yeah.
This gets fairly close to as perfect as Doctor Who can get. Even the Minorian stuff for me is pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I think like I would prefer a story like Dalek, for example, because it's doing all the things that this story is doing, but also adding in some of that ambition.
Yes.
But because of that, I'm also going to give it a 9. Like there's like the only reason it's not like a 10 is because again, maybe it's not being as ambitious as other stories are, but it doesn't necessarily need to be, and
No.
certainly on every technical level, it's all working fantastically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9.
And once again, like at this point in the show's run, Doctor Who hasn't had an alien adventure for years. This is a very ambitious first one.
For sure.
Like it
For
could have
sure.
been, they could have played it safe and just gone, okay, we're off to like Mars, let's do something there,
Or they,
and
or maybe they'd
standard invasion
finally
story.
they show up on Metebelis 3, which the Doctor would go to later on in the third Doctor run. So it is funny that maybe they thought that, maybe they thought, yeah, let's do Metebelis 3, but then someone said, no, let's do this other wacky idea.
Yeah.
And thank God they did. Because it's special. This is a
Yeah,
special story.
I love this episode so much.
Yeah, it's great.
Next time we're gonna be looking at the two-part story, The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit.
That is going to be very interesting, because that was, and I'll obviously go into this in way more detail, but that was a surprisingly formative moment for me in my
Interesting.
when I was a kid watching those stories.
I can't wait to hear that story.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into it.
Until then, I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and yeah, why don't you take this one, Fitz?
Doctor Who's job isn't simply to amuse. There's a lot of things that are serious and a lot of things that are political. Deal with it.